when we're talking about string setups on or by surface type, players do have or will change their behavior a little bit. So typically on faster surfaces, so be it grass or faster hard courts, they'll typically increase their tension. By how much is open to the interpretation of the player, depending on the environment as well. But typically they might increase tension by 2 to 4 pounds and work within that range for that entire tournament. On the slower court side, so a clay court or a really slow hard court, players will often go down in tension just because they got a little bit more time, which helps. A lower tension means the rackets or the ball's going to go higher over the net again. It's going to give them the perception of a little bit more power. And then given they've got more time, their control will naturally be a little bit better on those surfaces as well. The second thing to layer into that is the environment. So what we know is that in hotter conditions, dry conditions, the ball itself actually becomes faster. Okay, and what that means is that the ball will spend less time on the player's strings. It will also come in, it'll have a harder impact on the strings just because it's traveling faster. So typically players will up their tension to assist with them giving better control or a more true flight. In cooler, more humid conditions, what we'll find is that the ball will typically be a little bit fluffier. It's going to be slower through the air. So they'll do the exact opposite. What the players will do is they'll start to drop their tension a little bit, and that just helps them, give them, again, perception of more power because the ball's traveling out of the string bed over the net a little bit further. It'll also spend a little bit more time on the strings at that lower tension, which helps with that projection over the net. So yes, we will have some data on that, but again, that comes down to, I think one of the things here is every player on tour does something a little bit different when it comes to that. So you've got players like Rafael Nadal. He is notorious to just same string tension, same string everywhere he goes. Doesn't change, right? You go to someone else on tour, say a Nishikori or a Khachanov, those guys are changing their string tension within a match according to the conditions. So they'll actually have rackets ready to go and they'll be changing their tensions accordingly to the in-match conditions. So it's a little bit tough to go, based on conditions, we do X and Y. But what I can say is typically, at least based on historical averages that we see across the Australian Open, is that hotter days, we're going to see an average increase of maybe 2 to 4 pounds across the playing cohorts. On cooler days, we'll see the opposite of that, so a reduction of around 2 to 4 pounds in string tension.
Welcome to Coach Life, where tennis isn't just a game, it's a relentless pursuit. The coaches here aren't the ones looking for fame. They're the ones who forged champions in the shadows. They are the junior coaches, the quiet achievers who crafted the legends of today. Players like Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, and Taylor Fritz. These are the coaches who know the grind, the discipline, and the passion it takes to go from a kid with potential to a world-class athlete.
I think a hotter day in the Australian Open, it's probably not even about what's a hot day versus what's a cold day. Being in Melbourne, we can have a day that's, the day prior is 20 and the next day is 40. That's a pretty big change. Or alternatively, we could have 4 40 days in a row and then the next day is the 35. That's also enough change that the player will go, well, it's actually dropped a fair bit today, so they'll adjust accordingly. So I think Melbourne's a poor example of what's a hot day, what's a cold day, because we can also have a lot of rain one day and very hot, dry conditions the next. So the Australian environment itself is actually very challenging for players to change their equipment. But what we've started to implement with our athletes that we work with is we find a lot of them can actually take that step too far and become overly objective with the way that they're changing their tensions. So what we now do is we'll actually say to our athletes, well, okay, this is your natural playing tension, which might be 50 pounds as an example. You start the match with that, or you do your warm-up with that. If it feels like you're landing the ball too short, hey, you're gonna pull from your bag. You've got 2 other rackets in there that are a lower tension. You'll play with those. If you get to a point in the match where conditions have changed, you're feeling tighter or whatever, or you feel like you're hitting the ball long, then you might change to it. If you're hitting the ball long, you'll change to it. The tighter tension's in your bag. So typically with most of our Australian athletes, we'll have a sample of rackets in their bag. So we don't have them all at the same tension. We might have a small range. So 2 at 50, 2 at 52 or 54, and 2 at 46, 48, whatever it is. And the athletes actually now just will self-regulate. Hey, far out, my ball's going long every shot. Time to get the fresh racket or the one that's tighter. Or, geez, my opponent's just, I'm hitting it so short, my opponent's just taking advantage of that. Time to go to the looser racket.